A song about a stalker obsessively watching his ex has soundtracked more weddings than anyone can count, shown up in Stranger Things and The Sopranos, and racked up nearly 3 billion streams on Spotify. That's Every Breath You Take for You.
Every breath you take.
So inescapable that most people never stopped to actually listen to what it was saying. Released in 1983.
Hello Andy, it's Stuart. I've got a new song.
Every breath you take.
As the lead single from The Police's final album, Synchronicity, it spent 8 weeks at #1 in America, won the Grammy for Song of the Year,
nominated as Song of the Year. Now, there are 5 songs, and of course, you know, only one can win. Every breath you take. Sting, winner.
and BMI called it the most played song in radio history. By any measure, Every Breath You Take is one of the biggest songs ever made. And for over 4 decades, it's been at the center of one of rock music's most bitter disputes. The song pulls in around $740,000 a year in royalties, every cent going to one person, Sting. The guitarist who arguably saved the track from being scrapped gets nothing. The drummer, who spent weeks just figuring out how to play it, gets nothing. So in August 2025, Andy Summers and Stewart Copeland finally had enough and took him to London's High Court. To understand why, you have to go back to where the song came from. And here's what makes this case so interesting. Nobody actually disagrees on the facts. Everyone knows exactly what happened, and the fight is purely about what the song means. In the autumn of 1982, Sting was staying at Goldeneye, the legendary Jamaican estate once owned by Ian Fleming. He woke up in the middle of the night, sat down at the piano, and wrote the entire song in about half an hour. Chords, melody, lyrics, all of it. He later demoed it at a London studio, recording himself over a Hammond organ. It was pleasant enough, but it sounded like a 1970s session record. It did not sound like The Police. When he brought that demo to Air Studios in Montserrat a few months later, the band was already falling apart. Sting and Copeland genuinely couldn't stand each other at this point. Producer Hugh Padgham confirmed the two of them hated each other, with arguments turning physical. Sting has said he spent much of the tour that followed nursing a broken rib from a backstage fight with Copeland. A crisis meeting with their manager, Miles Copeland, Stewart's own brother, was the only thing that kept the album alive. In that environment, Every Breath You Take nearly didn't make it either. Sting and Copeland couldn't agree on how the bass and drums should work together, and the song was close to being scrapped. That's when Sting turned to Andy Summers and said something simple: go in there and make it your own. What happened next is really the crux of everything. Summers had spent the early 1980s working with experimental guitarist Robert Fripp, and somewhere along the way, he'd gotten deep into the string duos of Hungarian composer Bla Bark, spending hours trying to understand their harmonic structures. That obsession had quietly shaped the way he heard music. So when he walked into the studio to put guitar on Sting's chord sequence, something clicked. He came up with a clean, hypnotic, arpeggiated riff drawn from that Bark-influenced voicing, and he played it in a single take. The room went quiet. Then everyone started clapping. That riff is now one of the most recognizable guitar parts ever recorded. It's the first thing you hear when the song starts, and it's the thread that holds the host. Himself has been pretty direct about it. That song was going in the trash until I played on it, he told a podcaster in 2023. And I think that's composition, absolutely.
You know, that song, Every Breath You Take, was going in the trash. We didn't like it. And I went in and I got that lick almost, it was like one take. Everybody stood up and cheered.
And yet when the song was registered and released, the songwriting credit listed one name: Sting. The guitarist who came up with the riff the whole world fell in love with got nothing on paper. The drummer got nothing on paper. To this day, if you look up the official credits, it's Sting's song, his alone. The injustice, if you want to call it that, was embarrassing enough on its own. But in 1997, things got a whole lot worse. That was the year Puff Daddy was looking for a way to pay tribute to the notorious B.I.G. after his murder. The song he built became I'll Be Missing You, and what he sampled wasn't Sting's melody or his lyrics. It was Andy Summers' guitar riff. That exact arpeggio Summers played in one take in a Caribbean studio in 1983 is the foundation of the entire record. And every royalty dollar it generated went straight to Sting.
Is it true that Diddy has to pay you $2,000 a day because he didn't ask permission to sample every breath you take?
Yeah.
Wow.
For the rest of his life.
Wow.
No.
Sting famously joked that it put a couple of his kids through college. Summers, meanwhile, was walking through record stores, hearing his own riff playing everywhere while seeing none of the money. That, more than anything else, is what lit the fuse that eventually led to the High Court in 2025. This is where it gets interesting, because the lawsuit is about something bigger than just three famous men arguing over old credits. Yes, the question of whether Summers and Copeland deserved writing credits in 1983 is central to the case. But running alongside that is a very modern legal fight that affects musicians everywhere. Back in the early days, the Police had an agreement to share income with Summers and Copeland as arrangers, even on songs Sting wrote alone. That was eventually put in writing, revised in 1995, and revised again in 2016. Those agreements covered mechanical royalties, basically the payment you receive each time a song is reproduced, like a CD pressing or a digital download. The problem is that streaming doesn't work that way. Sting's legal team argues the 2016 agreement only covers the manufacture of records and that streaming counts as a public performance, which would mean Summers and Copeland are owed nothing from billions of streams. Summers and Copeland's lawyers argue that interpreting a decades-old contract in a way that cuts out the dominant form of music consumption today is absurd. They also point to the fact that in 2022, Sting sold his entire songwriting catalog to Universal Music Group for somewhere between $200 and $300 million. A catalog built partly on music they helped create, and they got nothing from that either. Underneath all the legal arguments, there's a genuinely interesting question that the music industry has never fully resolved: what actually counts as a song? The traditional legal definition is narrow. You wrote the melody, the lyrics, and the chord progression. That's the song. Everything else, the way a drummer grooves, the texture a guitarist brings, gets classified as arrangement, and arrangers don't get the same protections or royalties as songwriters. In the physical sales era, this was manageable. Records sold, everyone made money, life went on. But in the streaming era, publishing royalties, the money that flows from the composition itself, have become a much bigger piece of what an old catalog earns. Those old handshake understandings of we're all in this together don't translate into actual money the way they used to. What makes this whole thing even more fascinating is how candid everyone has been. Copeland once described Every Breath You Take as Sting's best song with the worst arrangement, then immediately said Summers' guitar part was brilliant. That's a remarkably honest thing to say while actively suing someone, but it captures exactly where things stand. Nobody disputes what each person contributed. The argument is purely about what those contributions are legally worth. Speaking of where things stand now, as of January 2026, a preliminary hearing was held at London's High Court, with none of the three band members actually present. It came out that Sting had already paid Summers and Copeland over $800,000 since the lawsuit was filed, which sounds like a lot until you hear that the plaintiffs are claiming somewhere between $2 million and $10.75 million, a figure that could climb even higher once historic underpayments and interest are factored in. A full trial is still to come. What makes this case so unusual is that there's no mystery about who did what. No conflicting stories, no he said, she said. Everyone agrees on the facts. The fight is purely about what those contributions are legally worth in a world that didn't exist when the song was made. Meanwhile, Every Breath You Take just keeps going, racking up streams, playing at weddings, showing up in TV shows, and earning its sole credited author nearly $750,000 a year. Sting keeps performing. Summers and Copeland keep watching a song the whole world associates with their band pay out to one person, and the case is far from over. This case matters beyond just the police. The same argument is playing out in courtrooms everywhere as streaming has completely changed what a music catalog is worth. Who owns a song? What's the difference between writing it and making it what it actually is? These are questions the industry still hasn't figured out. The Police were almost the perfect band for this to happen to. Copeland's drumming and Summers' guitar playing were just as central to their sound as Sting's songwriting, and everyone knows it. But on paper, Sting wrote the songs and took the credits. In music, whoever holds the publishing holds the power. They hated making music together. Sting was done with the band by the time Synchronicity was finished. And yet they made their most successful album in the middle of open warfare, and the centerpiece of that album was a song that almost got scrapped, saved by one guitarist in a single take. More than 4 decades later, the question of who that story belongs to and what it's worth is still being decided in a London courtroom, and we'll surely have more details on it. So subscribe to our channel and share the video with your friends. Until then, see you.